Just being honest, they make their money in our communities, but they don't volunteer, they don't give back, they take it back to their communities and essentially are pulling resources from our communities that we should have ownership of and we should have control of.
Hey everyone, how you doing? I'm Brandon Rule, your host of The Rose That Grew, Be Rule on all platforms. This week, special guest, Marcus Daniels, commercial real estate broker and developer out of the DMV area and working throughout the country. In this episode, you'll see how politics relates to real estate and all things in between are really built off the back of people. So, without further ado, I want to welcome you into our house. Welcome to The Rose That Grew, and I appreciate you for joining me. Thank you.
You know I came from the struggle, but I was made for the hustle. Out in the concrete jungle, I made my way up the top. This for the entrepreneurs, this who I market it for. We see the obstacles, yeah, we acknowledge them all. When people was doubting it all, we conquered it all. Listen to stories from people I met, dealing with real estate, dealing with tech. 24/7, they get to the check, breaking the barriers people have set. One man clubhouse road, look what the concrete grows. Roads that the sunlight builds, sun in the hill, beat roads. Look at it,
I'm your
Rose
host,
that
Brandon
grew.
Rule. I have a very special guest, Marcus Daniels. The Rose That Grew, just for anyone that's just joining us, is really a show that explores the mindset of entrepreneurs. We're going to focus on business, finance, and real estate for the most part, but we'll get beyond that too. So without further ado, I'd like to get my brother introduced. What's up?
Yes, sir.
Welcome.
My brother, appreciate
You coming on.
You already know.
How you doing?
Doing very well. We're in beautiful Atlanta, Georgia, and really appreciate the opportunity to hop on The Rose That Grew.
Let's get it. So for people that may not know you, I can give you a quick introduction, but I think it'll be better served for you to do it. So high level, Marcus Daniels is a phenomenal commercial real estate broker out of the DMV area, but an even better person. Can you elaborate on that?
Thank you, brother. I appreciate that. My name's Marcus Daniels. I'm a commercial real estate broker and vice president at NAL Michael, based in the DC region. I've been in the commercial real estate brokerage business now for 6 years, and it has truly been one of the most fulfilling journeys of my life, being able to sell commercial real estate and help to build communities in the neighborhoods that I grew up in. I'm very humbled and blessed to be able to change communities and provide opportunities to people and leave an impact. I never thought in a million years that I'd be doing commercial real estate brokerage when I first started. And just the amount of people that I've been able to help, the amount of value I've been able to create in the community has been something that I never thought that I would do as a kid. So it's been an unbelievable journey. Really excited to be able to get more of us into the business. As you know, Brandon, African Americans are very well underrepresented in the commercial real estate industry. In the brokerage business, less than 2% of commercial real estate brokers are African American, and less than 1% of women are in the commercial real estate brokerage business as well. So
let me pause you there. We're not going to get too deep. I love where you're going. Of course, I'm passionate about all of those things. But before we jump into commercial real estate, let's talk about you, Marcus, as a person. Let's rewind. Who are you? Where are you from? What are your core values that is really getting you to have this conversation and be intentional about creating that opportunity for people in this industry specifically? But give us some background. I know you're from PG County. I call you Mr. PG.
Yes, sir.
But tell the people a little bit more about your upbringing.
For sure. So born in Washington, D.C., grew up in Accokeek, Maryland, which is the southernmost tip of Prince George's County. I had the opportunity to go to Oxon Hill High School where, you know, growing up as a kid in, you know, southern Prince George's County, I was very fortunate to grow up around my family and grow up in a village environment. My parents' house being next to my grandparents' house, my uncle's house being down the street, my cousin's house being right down the street as well. So I truly grew up in a village. And as a young kid, I always had that support system of people around me that I could count on. My grandfather and my father being two of the most inspirational people in my life, constantly instilling things in me on a day-to-day basis of, you know, how to be a man, how to be honorable, how to be respectful, how to give back to your community, how to be selfless, how to be just a good person. And all of those things, I think from an early age, growing up in that environment, gave me really the confidence to be able to do the things that I've done, the things that I'm doing today. being able to be around my family and growing up in that village environment was something that was very unique. And I realized that some of my friends and even people that I would meet thereafter didn't have that same type of structure. And so as I continued to, go to high school, had the pleasure of going to and blessing of going to Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia, meeting people who didn't have, both parents in the household or didn't have a brother or sister or mentors or a village to support them. It reminded me how blessed I was, but then from that blessing, how much of a responsibility I had to give back to my community and create opportunities for other people. Being from Prince George's County, growing up as a kid, there was a lot of great things that I saw growing up, but there was a lot of bad things that I saw growing up as well. I can remember from the time I was 8 years old, seeing people that I knew or my sister's friends getting murdered, unfortunately, or going to jail or getting caught up in the streets. And I knew from an early age I didn't want to go that route. And I made a conscientious decision early on that I wanted to lay a path forward not only for my family, but people around me as well. I didn't think that real estate would be the vehicle to be able to do that, but I knew that that was my operating mantra, and I wanted to use my skill sets and talents to be able to help people. So that was very important for me starting out, and I really attribute my family for instilling that in me.
Absolutely, man. There's a ton to unpack there. A couple of the things that really stood out to me. I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, arguably the worst place for Black people in the country. Born in LA, went to Milwaukee, cool. I didn't realize how much of a village type culture it was in the DMV until I got there. Moved there about 4.5 years ago, and I've experienced this thing, like multi-generational college graduates. Like, it's not a thing where I'm from. Prince George's County is one of the most affluent counties for African Americans in the entire country, right?
Absolutely.
And it's been that way for a very, very long time, correct?
For decades now.
So it's interesting to hear your perspective coming from that versus my perspective coming from Milwaukee and having the pretty much exact same mission, right? Regardless of the responsibility, et cetera. But I think it's super dope that as you went on to Morehouse and started to meet people from outside of PG County and started to see how these experiences are actually not normal. You know what I mean? Like, you are more of an anomaly than most of the people in the country that are Black and brown. So super, super encouraged to see that people can come from those environments and still keep community at the core, but also be able to respect and embrace people from other environments and understand those challenges as well. Like, I was fortunate to have 2 parents. I don't have any brothers and sisters, and my family is a village. We don't come from very much money. We're very lower middle class, but the principles of love and family and village are there. But to have your aunt, your uncle, your cousin, your sisters, your mother, your father, all in this close vicinity, like that's super unique. And I think, man, hats off to you, to your family, and look forward to the next generation of that.
Absolutely.
That's super dope.
I'll tell you, as a kid, I didn't always appreciate it because, your kid, you kind of get, you get into some things you may, want to, if you're bad, that you're going to get it not only from your parents, but I'm going to get it from my auntie, my uncle, my grandmother, my cousin. So, but as I got older, man, it was something that I really, and as you mentioned, Brandon, as I met more people who had different experiences than me, it was something that I grew to appreciate more. So huge shout out to my family.
So born in DC, went to PG. Did you play sports growing up at all?
Oh yeah. So when I was PG County, if you ever seen In the Water documentary on Showtime, talking about all the great athletes that have come from Prince George's County, Maryland. Growing up as a kid, I always played basketball. Literally, since I have an older sister, but I didn't have any brothers, and since we lived kind of in this little village by myself, I would shoot basketball pretty much by myself after school. But I ended up playing AAU basketball from the time I was 7 years old through the time I was 16. Had the pleasure of playing against Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, OJ Mayo, pretty much all the guys who are, pretty much made it to the league and are doing really well. Jeff Green, Joe Hayden was one of my little bros. We played rec ball together in Fort Washington.
Nice.
And just seeing my friends being able to elevate and take it to the next level was unbelievable. But one of the things that it instilled in me from an early age, and I'll tell you this, Brandon, I grew up in southern Prince George's County, which is a little ways, people say it's the country from Washington, D.C., but my father always would take me back into the city. And so from when I was in middle school and high school, I literally would leave school. My dad worked at Pepco, which is a big utility company. He was an underground cable splicer. So anytime the power goes out, it's a bad storm, he's the guy going underground, changing the cables, restoring people's power. And he literally would get up for work 4:30 in the morning, work until about 3:30, pick me up from school, take me to number 2 boys club, start some quarters in DC, and I would play basketball pretty much from 5:30 until about 9, 10 o'clock every night. And that was a unique experience as well. Some Quarters was for those who are not familiar with DC, was a very economically challenged community back in the late 90s and early 2000s. A lot of crime, a lot of disparities as it relates to income, education, and just resources for the community. And my teammates, a good amount of my teammates lived in that community. And so just from being able to play with them, spend time with them, understanding the things that they dealt with, the struggles that they had, that never left me. And it instilled a sense of competitiveness in me on and off the court that sticks with me to this day. So the highlight of my basketball career was AAU. We were top 25 when I was 13. But you'll appreciate this, Brandon, because you're a tall guy. When I started on the basketball team, I was the center.
Jeez.
When I left the basketball team, I was the point guard. I stopped growing, okay?
You stopped growing?
I stopped growing. I literally started on my AAU team, I was the center, and then by the time I got like 15, 16, I was the point guard, and I said, I don't think I'm gonna make it to.
It's time to hang it up.
It's time to hang it up.
Gotcha.
And I didn't make my high school basketball team, but the way that I wanted to stay engaged in basketball was to support my friends and be a part of this story legacy with my high school. And I'll talk about that later. That was the point where I realized, like, I'm not gonna make it to the league. I need to really focus on my books and figure out what I'm gonna do in my life. And that was a huge turning point for me.
Interesting. Sursum Quarter, I lived in Noma when I moved to DC. That's any of you new Washingtonians, Sursum Quarter is adjacent to Noma, right? It was in Noma, essentially. So it wasn't called Noma back then. It was a different community, but just wanted to connect those dots. Yeah, man, sports is always a interesting way to breed business owners, I think, right? Like, to me, business is the number one most competitive sport. I think you can be collaborative, and a lot of the tools in terms of team playing and ownership and different things like that all start out with sports, but they all, have adjacencies directly tied to owning a business, running a business, operating a business. So super cool there, man. So you have this young, emerging, focused high schooler graduating from the DMV area. And then you say, I'm gonna fly across country, 10-hour drive to Atlanta, Georgia to become a Morehouse man. What went into that decision? Why did you want to go from DC to Morehouse as opposed to maybe DC to Howard or one of the other HBCUs? And why did you select the HBCU even over maybe a PWI?
That's a great question. I can remember the first time I came to Atlanta, Georgia, I was 13 years old. My sister at the time, she had just graduated from the University of Maryland. She was a very top student at University of Maryland, Baltimore County. She ended up getting into grad school at Emory University here in Atlanta. And from that, from the first time I came to Atlanta to help her move in, I knew it was something different about Atlanta and the Southern hospitality. But at the time, I wasn't aware of Morehouse College. I had a coworker of my mom's son had went to Morehouse, and she absolutely raved about his experience, and she would always tell me, one day you're going to go to Morehouse, or one day you are going to be a Morehouse man. And I didn't know what that meant. And quite honestly, when I had started to get into high school and get, growing up, becoming a young man, I realized that I really love growing up in PG County. I love the DMV. I love my family. But what was best for me at the time I was 17 years old was not to stay in the DMV. It was to get away and spread my wings.
Why did you feel like that was best for you?
I felt like that was best for me because at the time when I was 17, I had, a lot of good things going on in my own life, but I had a lot of distractions and bad things that were going on around me and in my community. And I felt as though that if I stay home, I may get distracted and I may not be able to fulfill my true potential or my goal. I can remember on Christmas Eve of 2000, of the year 2000, I actually got into Morehouse College. On Christmas Day, I got into Howard University. I only applied to 2 schools. And from that, I knew at the time that I was going to go to Howard because all my friends were going to Howard. It was comfortable for me. My friends were going to be there. But I would constantly come back down because, of course, going on HBCU college tours, meeting with people, going to different schools. And there was something about when I was at Morehouse that stuck out to me. There were young men in suits. They were had briefcases. They were talking about businesses that they wanted to start, companies that they wanted to work for. And it was a brotherhood that I had always sought. Even though I love my big sister to the death, I always wanted a brother, whether it was a little brother or a big brother. And that was the brotherhood that I was able to tap into. And quite honestly, it was one of the best decisions of my life. I tell people all the time, Morehouse changed my life because in Howard, don't get me wrong, a lot of my friends went to Howard, great school. But for me personally, at 17 years old, coming to Atlanta, this is where I became a man, and Morehouse made me a man.
So to that, becoming a man in college comes with a lot of things. Like, we can cut all the professional talk for a moment.
For sure.
Give me one of the experiences at Morehouse that sticks with you today.
Oh, no, that's a great question. I had
What's the wildest experience at Morehouse? You may not have participated in it, but just give us,
absolutely.
Give us a little insight.
I'll give you some insight. So obviously I had no family down here, no cousins. If anything went wrong, there's nobody that I could call, okay? And so I can remember my sophomore year, there was a situation where I was going to meet up with one of my friends to go to the movies. We ended up...
Girlfriend?
Oh, this is one of my female friends. And so we ended up talking like, we're going to meet up at the movies at Atlantic Station. Cool. So I would never forget this. I'm rushing to get ready to go to the movies. I rush and I forget my license.
I thought you were about to say deodorant.
No. I gotta stay fresh, brother. Gotta stay fresh.
For sure.
I realized I had left my license, right? So I'm like, oh man, I gotta go back to the apartment. But crazy enough, by the time I realized it, there was a roadblock set up on Northside Drive. Okay, it was a DUI checkpoint. They were trying to catch people who were driving drunk. I had not drunk anything. I was, just pretty much leaving right from the apartment. But I didn't have my license with me, right? And that was one of the first times that I had interaction with, police in the Atlanta area. And crazy enough, one of my roommates from the dorm I stayed in my freshman year was right in front of me, and he got caught in the roadblock as well. Fortunately for him, it didn't turn out so well. He ended up getting arrested that night. But I ended up getting pressed out by the police for not having my license, even though I was saying, look, man, I just forgot it. It was an honest mistake. I hadn't been drinking, nothing like that. But just the understanding I couldn't call my mama.
Did they take you out the car?
No, they didn't tell me to step out the car.
Gotcha.
But they say, hold on, sir, we'll be right back. But can you imagine at 18, 19, you see, one of your essentially one of your brothers right in front of you, something happened to him. You're like, man, even though I didn't do anything wrong, I haven't done anything wrong, it's just an honest mistake, I don't know what's about to happen. And I can't call my mama, I can't call my daddy, I gotta handle the situation. And ironically enough, and I think it's because of grandma's prayers and mama's prayers, the officer ran my date of birth and my information, saw that I had a license in Maryland, just an honest mistake, hey, you can go. But I thought about how many other young Black men weren't let go from their own situations. And that, when you asked that question, it stuck out to me for a number of reasons. One, I had to be a man, I had to handle that situation, I couldn't call my mama. But then two, reminding me of those type of issues as it relates to racial injustice, racism, how police treat men of color, particularly African-American men, and that stuck out to me. I would never forget that. So that wasn't maybe the wildest story, but it was something that stuck with me, and I'm forever grateful that it turned out the way that it did.
So, yeah, that couldn't have been the wildest Morehouse story you had. No way. But that's a great segue because you have a background in politics, and if y'all can't tell, this man just gave us a very political answer. So let's go on from Morehouse to what did you study at Morehouse, and how did that lead into your next few professions?
Absolutely. So as soon as I stepped foot at Morehouse College, I knew that I wanted to be actively involved. When I was in high school, I was a 3.0 student. I wasn't the all-A student, but I was involved in everything. As I mentioned, played AAU basketball. I sung in the choir. No, I cannot sing today. That was a long time ago. I ran track. I stepped on the step team. I was just kind of a well-rounded person. I worked at this store called Up Against the Wall, and was working 2 or 3 jobs when I was in high school because, when you were young, especially back in the day, man, you wanted to buy your own clothes and do all those things. And so for me, when I got to Morehouse, I knew that I wanted to be involved and I wanted to have a well-rounded experience. And from that, I ended up getting involved immediately in student government. And I ran for the president, to be the president of my dorm. That ended up getting me involved in student government on campus and opened me up to meeting and building a ton of relationships with people on campus. That experience was phenomenal. Though I had studied finance and I was a business major, and I knew I wanted to go into entrepreneurship, politics was something that I had always been surrounded by. Growing up in Prince George's County and volunteering on campaigns, helping out with volunteer projects, things of that nature. But I knew that I wanted to be of service. I didn't necessarily know what profession I would be in once I graduated Morehouse, but I knew I wanted to do something that was of service. And so with that, I ended up just getting deeply involved in student government. Over the 4 years I was in student government, I was able to organize community service events, helping students get bus rides to Walmart, because at the time there was no Uber. So if you didn't have family here, there was no way for you to be able to get groceries or the essential things that you need. And ironically enough, even to this day, we know some of the same people, giving opportunities for people to start their own businesses. So I can remember, as an example, for homecoming, being able to pick or be a part of the team that would pick, okay, this entertainment company's gonna throw this party or host this event or host this cookout or this activity. And years later, the same people that were doing those events on campus now, running entertainment companies, own entertainment properties, and I will never forget that. When I was at Morehouse, I was not thinking about going into commercial real estate. That was not an option that was presented to most business students at Morehouse at the time. What was presented to us was, especially if you're a finance major, you want to get as good of grades as you can. You want to summer in your sophomore year at an investment banking firm or a private equity shop. in New York, and you hopefully want to get an offer before you go into your senior year, making six figures, working on Wall Street, XYZ. I graduated in 2009. Some of my friends that graduated in 2008, they got good grades, busted their butt all 4 years, got the job offers, and then the economic downturn. And a good amount of my friends ended up getting laid off and had to completely change the direction of their career. And that was something that really made me question, is this what I want to do? Is this the type of, do I want to go into this right now? And will I even have an opportunity to get a job or employment opportunities? And the answer to that was no, because banks were not hiring, and those opportunities were just not there for me.
Yeah, it's interesting. Around the same time, I participated in a program called the ACRE program that taught me really high level what development was. And coming out of that in 2010, there were no commercial real estate jobs. So there was no banking jobs really available. There's no real commercial real estate jobs available. It makes sense that you kind of pivoted into politics and got into community development and economic development, and then circled back into commercial real estate when the turn came back around. Interesting. Yeah, that's something.
If I could just add to that, what I had to decide was, okay, if I'm not going to go on Wall Street or I'm not going to work at a bank, what am I going to do? And so I had applied for, as most college students at that time in 2009, 2010 timeframe, you're just hoping to get a job, right? So I applied Teach for America. I applied for all types of consulting jobs, corporate finance jobs. I had applied to fellowship programs, and I applied to Peace Corps.
You took a fellowship program,
and I did,
right?
yeah. And so this is when I got really the bug for community development. So
let's go through the timeline really quick.
Okay.
So high school, and then you're at Morehouse. Did you have any internships throughout the freshman through senior year at all?
For sure, yeah. So when I was at Morehouse, I ended up interning in the Atlanta City Council, the president's office.
So you were doing organizing on campus, but you also were in politics off campus.
I was coming to Atlanta City Hall 2-3 times a week, organizing files, but seeing, council members and government officials being able to do the business of the city and work to improve the lives of residents. And though I was an intern and pretty much shuffling papers and organizing things, I saw the opportunity to be able to serve and help people that really needed the most help at that time. For sure.
So you interned in politics. What other internships did you have in college, or was that the only one?
For sure. So that was the earliest one. I did a fellowship program that was during my freshman year.
Okay.
Then between my freshman year and my sophomore year, I did a program at UCLA. This is a fellowship program.
So you flew out to LA and you stayed there?
I flew out to LA and I spent a whole summer in LA.
Nice.
Again, no friends, no family out there. And the program at UCLA was specifically around racial justice and social inequity. And so we literally would study every day about the historical social movements that took place across not only America, but other places across the world that were around racial injustice and social inequity. Mm-hmm. So that started to get my wheels turning even more,
for sure,
coupled with the history of civil rights leaders from Morehouse College, like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and others that had a tremendous role to play in changing the culture of the time into what we have today.
So you and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. have something really in common, right? You're part of the greatest fraternity in the world.
Absolutely.
Sorry, Morehouse. Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. As you're going through this process, is that kind of what led you in that direction as well? We'll get back to the timeline, but I thought that was a great point to bring out. You started off business, finance focused, got into politics, studied racial inequities, and was influenced by Dr. Martin Luther King. Tell us about how that impacted your decision to become fraternal and join this organization.
Oh, it had a huge impact. For me, as I had mentioned, I always wanted to have the feeling of brotherhood. And as a young man in high school, I had the benefit of having mentors that were older than me, that poured into me, gave me advice, said, hey, keep doing what you're doing, encouraged me. And I didn't know that they were alphas at the time, but I really admired them and I looked up to them. As I had got to the end of my senior year and was getting ready to go to Morehouse, they obviously started to talk about, hey, well, about fraternities? Are you excited about Greek life and being on campus? And explain to me, there are different fraternities that you can join and what that process was like. My sister was a Delta when she was in college, and so that was my first experience to Greek life, and seeing just the strong relationships that she had with her line sisters and sorority sisters, and that was something that I had definitely wanted. So when I got to Morehouse, quite naturally, all the fraternities on campus have just phenomenal brothers and are doing great work. But I was drawn to Alpha Phi Alpha because of my mentors, because of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., because of people who I had looked up to from the time I was a kid that I didn't know were alphas. And then from my research and understanding, saying, oh, they are alphas. But I will specifically say that the alphas at Morehouse College at that time when I was 18 years old, when I looked at them, I saw myself 2 or 3 years in the future. And when I saw the younger alumni brothers that had graduated, that had jobs or started their own businesses and were achieving success, I said, that's how I want to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And so I was inspired by them. And quite honestly, it wasn't just their professional success or academic success. They were just good people. They would give the shirt off of their back and not think twice about it. And that fit in line with my core values. And so I will say, second to going to Morehouse, becoming a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated was the second best decision of my life. And it's something that I'm forever grateful to be able to be a part of.
Most definitely. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So let's touch on timeline. You mentioned mentorship, something I've never really had and starting to gain it now, but definitely want to go there. And then we're going to get into the weeds of commercial real estate. But let's get back to the timeline for a moment. So had a couple internships at college. When you came out of college, what were the professions that you were doing from the time that college ended to becoming a commercial broker? Like, what jobs did you have? How long was that process in timeline? And what jobs did you have in the interim?
That process, from the time I was 21 to 27, 6 years, was, at the time, when you're young and you think you're going to have your whole life figured out, by the time I'm 21, I'm going to do this. By the time I'm 23, I want to do this. I would literally, and I know you do the same thing, read autobiographies and Wikipedia pages of people that I admired and looked up to, and would say, well, okay, by the age they were 25, they did this, and compare myself to those people. I quickly realized that is not how the real world works, and that's not how life works. I had graduated from Morehouse College, thought I was gonna go on Wall Street, didn't do that, ended up doing a fellowship program at the University of Michigan, studying public policy and community development. Again, no family, no friends. Moved out there, never been to Detroit. It's freezing cold out there.
Yeah, D-Town, what up, bro?
It's freezing cold, but the academic opportunity, but then also the opportunity to study at Ross Business School, to take classes at University of Michigan Law School, top 10 law school, and then at the policy school as well, coupled with a fellowship program that I was able to serve on the board of a community development corporation in Southwest Detroit.
What is a community development corporation?
So a community development corporation is a nonprofit organization that aims to improve the quality of life of residents in a particular community through real estate development, social services, as well as just quality of life resources that the community may not have. And so community development corporations, before I even knew what they were, had a tremendous impact on people that I knew in my friends' lives.
For sure.
But I just never knew them until I started to serve on the board of this community development corporation in Southwest Detroit called Bridging Communities. I never forget the first time I went to Detroit for the first board meeting. I took some time to ride around the community. And remember I told you about how I grew up in this village with my parents' house, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins. Couldn't get away with anything, literally. I remember going down a block and there were about 10 homes on the block. And out of the 10 homes, 9 of them were boarded up. And I went to the next block.
What year was this?
This is 2010.
Yeah, in Detroit. Sounds about right.
This is 2010. The auto industry collapse. Jobless claims are out the roof. Unemployment's out the roof.
I think they went from over
population decreased to less
well
than
over 1 million people to closer to half that number.
Exactly.
Right.
And it was, huge buildings and beautiful buildings boarded up. And I said, oh my goodness. I didn't grow up in this type of environment. I want to use
culture shock.
It was a culture shock, man. I said, I want to change this. I want to provide opportunity for people to have the chance to, grow up in a thriving community, live in a safe environment, have the resources they need to be able to change their situation. And I can remember being there and I said, God brought me here for a reason. And that's when it hit me, like, community development is what I want to be in. And politics was It
was adjacent to that. It's community development and politics definitely go hand in hand. Community economic development, politics, commercial real estate. It's all very much so intertwined. So I see the path of study business finance, and then let me learn about policy, and let me study racial injustice. And okay, how can policy impact some of these inequalities that we see from a racial perspective? How can policy impact some of the economic disadvantages that a community in Detroit or similar communities may face versus what I experienced growing up in PG County in your example, right? And that led you to community development. It's like, hey, this is a whole industry here that is literally driven by policy and tailored for the economic enrichment of these communities, right?
Absolutely.
So you mentioned you were kind of working with the CDC or on the board of the CDC or overseeing the CDC, right? After Michigan, what happened beyond them? Because I know you worked at a CDFI, and I would love for you to talk about maybe even the difference between CDC and CDFI.
Absolutely.
So start off with what you did next and then segue into that for me.
That's a great question. So my experience working with bridging communities in Southwest Detroit exposed me to the CDFI industry. CDFI is a community development financial institution that works to provide access to capital, small business development resources, as well as financial resources for the preservation and development of affordable and low-income housing, as well as providing entrepreneurship and business resources as well. So for me, the next opportunity from that was I had a chance to do a fellowship program at the U.S. Department of Treasury. And I just had applied to the Treasury Department's internship program. I didn't apply directly to the CDFI fund, but when they looked at my resume, they said, you know what, you'll be good to do not only this internship, but a fellowship at the CDFI fund. So I did my research. I said, oh, this is perfect.
What is the CDFI fund?
So the CDFI fund is an agency, an arm of the Treasury Department that primarily works to support and provide really the back support for CDFIs, but also they administer billions of dollars in tax credits and financial resources for the development and preservation of affordable housing, mixed-use developments, and communities of mostly communities of color and underserved communities that typically are underbanked and underserved and have a tremendous amount of really lack of capital and access from the larger banks and institutions. And so when I was at the CDFI fund, I knew when I came in, I wanted to learn as much as I could. So I was working in the New Market Tax Credit Program. The New Market Tax Credit Program is a program that provided essentially gap financing for large-scale commercial real estate and mixed-use development projects in these underserved communities. And I was reviewing every single application that came through for the past 2 years. So I'm literally learning the program. I'm working with the program managers. I'm working with the council. And I went into the director of the CDFI funds office, Donna Gambrell, huge mentor of mine. I ended up telling her, I said, I want a capstone project, and I wanted to be focused around how can I, when I started at this organization, how can I leave it in a better situation? In 2007, the Government Accountability Office released a report that showed that out of the $3.2 billion annually that was administered in new market tax credits, that less than 4% went to minority community development entities. As I started to peel back the onion of that GAO report and did a policy analysis coupled with the reviewing of all these applications, I realized that a majority of the entities that were getting hundreds of millions and tens of millions of dollars in these tax credits were large banks that had created community development arms, but really these community development entities that were on the ground, local, knew the community, had the pulse of the neighborhood. They would apply for far lesser amounts, but wouldn't get the tax credits. And so I had prepared a policy analysis and recommendation on how to create a capacity building initiative for minority and emerging CDFIs and CDEs. That presentation has since led to a capacity building initiative at the CDFI fund that is giving opportunity for those organizations to, scale up, have the opportunity to understand, the skill sets and talent that they need to run those organizations, and also being able to compete when they're applying for these tax credits. And so that was a phenomenal experience. And I knew from that point that I wanted to be in the community development finance space, and I wanted to be a part of this ecosystem.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And just to recap that, because it's a lot there. CDCs, community development corporations, are nonprofits that are tailored of, really uplifting the community, right? They are there to create economic empowerment, if you will. CDFIs are community development financial institutions, and those are entities that really are servicing the non-bankable businesses and community organizations that aren't eligible for traditional financing. So sometimes that's a startup business. Other times it's a company that just doesn't meet the threshold of bank criteria in terms of annual revenue, demographics, whatever the case may be. So with CDFIs and CDEs, these are entities that are truly changing the communities in which we're working in. CDFIs and CDCs are also separate from CDEs, community development entities, that are the entities that apply for some of these new market tax credits. There are very distinct differences between each one of those. There's oftentimes overlap, but to the point that you made, a lot of these large banks coming off of the financial crisis were creating community development entities to go out and capture some of these dollars that were funneling back into the very communities that were stripped of,
Absolutely.
some of their economic fabric, if you will. So super interesting parallel story. I'm working at a CDFI, two of them at the same time, that were getting funds from the CDFI fund, right? So, going in, learning about how various things of financing. I'm reading the business plans as well. That really sparked my interest. I knew I wanted to do development. I knew I wanted to help communities, but sitting on that side was, frankly, what really helped catapult me into the work that I'm doing today. So if people don't get anything else about this interview, I think the business of community development finance is one that's often not talked about enough in our community and often overlooked, but it's a tremendous business. As mentioned, in 2007, 3.2 billion were going just for new market tax credits alone, right? If you look at these numbers in 2021 and 2022, that number has risen significantly. So tremendous opportunity there. But to your point, there are paperwork. There's a tremendous amount of paperwork. There's a tremendous amount of box that you need to check. Because if you're getting hundreds of millions or billions of dollars, you have to have organizational infrastructure.
Absolutely.
And who is helping, one, our community be aware of this, two, building the capacity around that organizational infrastructure, or three, lobbying to create opportunity for people in the community to get these dollars. One of my biggest pet peeves, I'm gonna get on my high horse in a moment because this is your interview.
We talk about this all the time, brother.
Yeah, all the time. This is just one of our regular conversations. Yeah. One of my biggest pet peeves is that oftentimes the funds that get funneled into our community don't go to the community. There's a fiscal agent, there's some intermediary that often isn't owned by us. So it's like, yes, you are targeting this community and trying to help this community, but frankly, the thing that would help the community the most is to put dollars in the hands of those in the community as opposed to people that are helping those in that community, because oftentimes the administrative overhead and burden is where those dollars go as opposed to where they should be going the most. So,
absolutely. And just to put a bow on that, that's another part of my recommendations was that the CDFI fund should do a carve out every year, specifically for minority community development entities and the owners of minority community development financial institutions. There's, in the light of the killing of George Floyd, we've seen companies commit billions of dollars in funds and activities to be able to solve the most critical issues in our community. Just throwing money at an issue is not enough without the substance of growing and pouring into the people.
That's right.
Right? And so
what's your call to action? Look in the camera right there. Do a call to action because we're going to get this to whoever it needs to go to.
Absolutely. So my call for action is that we absolutely need to support and uplift the current minority-owned and Black-owned community development entities and organizations across our country, not only providing them with the financial resources and capital that they need to be able to grow, expand, and thrive, but as well as the human capital and the mentorship and education for them to be able to successfully execute their roles and responsibilities, but then also being able to give them the opportunity to create a strong track record so no one will ever question their ability to be able to successfully deploy funds, complete projects, and add value in the community. Oftentimes, that is one of the boxes, if you will, that they say, oh, well, you don't check the track record box, so you don't have the experience. Well, how could you have the experience if you never were taught, or you were never given the opportunity, or you weren't mentored, or you? So I would say that's a huge call for action. I've been calling for it since the time I was working at the CDFI fund, and now the work that both you and myself are doing. That call for action is even louder, and I think it's going to continue to grow.
Man, that's mic drop on that one. We could just segue. Let's leave that there. Let it simmer. Part 2 of this convo. We're going to come back and see how far we got.
Absolutely.
But definitely ton of stuff, man. Y'all probably thought y'all was going to hear a bunch about commercial brokerage, and we're going to get into it, but that was super important, man, because a lot of folks in our community may not know of some of the things that we spoke about. Mm-hmm. And if you don't, just take the time and do some research. Literally just Google CDC, CDFI, CDE, new market tax credit, low-income housing tax credit, opportunity zone. Just Google all of those things, right?
Absolutely.
And just start to become more aware of some of the entities that are pouring out this money into the community so we can get it. There is a program through the SBA. SBA has quite a few programs, but the SBDC, Small Business Development Corporation, Community, one of the two, SBDC. They are federally funded organizations that are more than likely tied to local universities. So in Washington, D.C., Howard University has a great one. For example, I've used it before. You can go there, they can help you with business plan, they can help you with market research, they can help you with all things business, completely free. You don't have to pay for a course, you don't have to pay for a coach, anything. SBDC, check it out.
Now, that's a great resource. That is an absolutely great resource. And to that point, B, using all of the free information that's out there, I mean, you literally, if you don't know, look it up, talk to people who are in the business. I know both you and I, when we were in school and even early on in our careers, we cold emailed people who were doing the type of work that we wanted to do, and then were places, roles, and positions that we may have aspired to be at, and just literally asking them to pick their brain or getting to know their journey. That was something that I literally would cold email and cold call people every week, and I made a list every week. Like, oh man, you're the vice president of community development finance at JP Morgan. I'd love to talk to you. And you're a brother too? Unicorn. Okay, how'd you get here? What was your journey? What do you deal with on a day-to-day? And
so real.
So that, and the people that, now that, we're a little older and have are a little further along in our journey, that's why we pour so much into people that we meet and younger people that want to become real estate developers, want to become real estate brokers, want to change the fabric of their communities because somebody poured into us and gave us an opportunity. So I don't think either one of us take that for granted.
Not at all. It's super interesting you said that, because we are at the Reinvest headquarters here in Atlanta, and the lead principal, CEO, chairman of this organization that we are kind of housed at, I emailed him probably in 2013, maybe, from my Rural Enterprises email. Yeah. Way back when, and I never heard back, to be honest. I don't even know if he saw my email, to be real with you, but perseverance was the key. Now we have a partnership. Now we're working on so many things that y'all gonna see coming down this pipe. We don't need to talk about that, but persistence, perseverance is my favorite word in the dictionary. And it's super important for you to be humble enough to do the outreach, but also understanding on the other side. Absolutely. So yeah, we care a lot, we give back a lot, but also we are busy. I mean, we're in the lab right now. So if y'all hear anything in the background, it's because literally we're in the office. This isn't a studio. Right. There's none of that. Like we are in the lab getting it in. So real time, real people, real everything. And to be frank, it's like this is the reality. I mean, it's gotten late. We had a long day, ups and downs, you know what I mean? But that's a part of the business, a part of the job. And sometimes we don't have time, really, right? We have dedicated time where we're giving back. Mm-hmm. We're creating programs, Reinvest Development Training Program, Reinvest Internship Program, Reinvest Commercial Bootcamp coming soon, exactly. Reinvest Conference coming soon, right? Reinvest is a crowdfunding platform that we are launching. By the time you see this, it may be launched, it may not. We're looking to launch Q1 or so, maybe even flowing into Q2 of 2022, but it's coming soon. It is democratizing commercial real estate investment. I think it's a pure inequity in itself that my mother cannot invest in my own real estate transactions. So we're changing that. You have to be the change, and we have very strategic partners to making sure we're going to be successful at every stage of this endeavor. So that's what I'm referring to as Reinvest. Along with your information and ability to invest, you're getting education. Right. So we're gonna teach you through various programs as well. So I just have to give that context because I keep saying Reinvest and people probably have no clue what I'm talking about. But yeah, let's park Let's talk about commercial real estate, man.
So I got to answer the second part of your question. I'm going to answer it within 2 minutes.
Okay.
Very quickly. So I leave the University of Michigan. I moved back home to Maryland. I'm finally back home. Oh my goodness, it feels like I've been gone forever. From 2005 roughly to about 2011, I had been in Atlanta and I had been in Michigan, and I finally was able to move back home. At the time when my fellowship program was over, I didn't have a job. I was so depressed. I said, man, I've worked so hard. I've put all this effort in. I thought I built great relationships. Why don't I have a job? Luckily enough, one of my mentors, one of our fraternity brothers, man, rest in peace to our brother Henry Stewart. He told me, send me your resume. I'm gonna shoot it around, see if I can help you find a job. Cool. So I had moved back. I was home maybe about a month, and he said, look, I have a call I want you to make. One of my friends is recently was appointed by the governor of Maryland to become a state delegate. He's looking to hire people for his staff. So I ended up meeting with the state delegate, had the opportunity to be able to interview with him in his office, and ultimately we ended up agreeing upon a salary and roles and responsibilities. And at that time, I became his legislative aide, and then went on to become the chief of staff in his office. And over that year and a half of working in the state legislature, I had learned so much about affordable housing issues. I learned a lot about issues that small businesses face in the state of Maryland as related to access to capital and business expansion. But then I also worked around criminal law and judiciary issues as well, because the member that I was working for served on that committee. And so I wasn't making a ton of money, but it was a great experience to be able to continue to be of service to my community in the heart of Prince George's County, Maryland. And that was something that I absolutely would never forget. Fast forward, I ended up working on his campaign. Unfortunately, he was not reelected, so I had to find another job. Another mentor reached out to me, said, look, man, I know you may not want to work in the healthcare space, but I got an opportunity. The governor just created this program. It's called the Health Enterprise Zone, where they're pouring grant dollars and money into improving the healthcare resources in communities of color across the state of Maryland. And so he said, I have an opportunity for you to work for this Health Enterprise Zone in Baltimore City. I said, awesome. When can I start? He said, well, you don't want to know exactly where in Baltimore? I said, it doesn't matter. I'm excited. I'm ready. Let's go. I'm young. I'm hungry. I'm ambitious. He's like, all right, you're going to be working in West Baltimore at Bon Secours Hospital. And this is if you've ever seen The Wire, this is the community where The Wire is shot in the neighborhood. And man, it brought me back full circle to when I was in Southwest Detroit and I was standing on that block and I seen all the blight. Again, I said, wow.
Here we go again.
Here I am again.
Yes.
Here I am again. And so fast forward, organizing cooking classes at 13 community centers, fitness classes at community centers, working around on affordable housing projects and community development initiatives. Did that for a year. It was a great experience. Ended up getting interviewed by one of two Black-owned banks in the state of Maryland, Harbor Bank of Maryland. And I was essentially interviewing for a position to be an assistant vice president of community development banking. So I said, okay, wow, now coming back to this community development finance space after all these experiences. It wasn't barely a month, when I was there, where I got a phone call from a mentor who said, you know what, I really think that you should consider, I know you just started in community development banking, but I really think you should consider opportunities in commercial real estate, specifically commercial real estate brokerage. And I want you to take a meeting with this company, NAI Michael, based in Prince George's County. Mm-hmm. You had talked about in 2013, when you had cold emailed Egbert Perry and didn't get a response back. funny enough, I did the same thing. I did the same thing to the late, great Wayne Curry, who was the first African-American county executive in Prince George's County. And he actually started his career at NAL Michael and then went on to become the president of the company.
Nice.
Unfortunately, he passed away before we ever had a chance to meet one-on-one, but his impact on my life had a tremendous value. So all this history, all this knowledge, and the company had pretty much built communities all over the county and built shopping centers, industrial parks, office buildings, residential communities. And I said, this is where I want to be. And when I think about the resources in the community and what people say they want, oh, why don't we have healthy food options? Why don't we have health clinics? Why don't we have dining options? Why don't we have the same resources that maybe some of these other communities nearby have? And why don't the people who are developing these projects and brokering these deals look like me? That stuck with me. And when I started at the company, I was literally one of 2 African Americans on my company. And that from the day that I was hired, they asked me, when did I want to start? And I said, right now. And from that day, it literally, it's crazy. It was this week. It was the 3rd week of October when I started. And from that day,
how many years ago was that?
6 years ago to this week.
Nice.
And
Okay.
and now it's exceeded my expectations and my wildest dreams.
Yeah, I'm sure it didn't start off that way. So let's
Not at all.
Let's start there, right? Commercial brokerage is a tough place to be. It's a tough business to be in because essentially you eat what you kill. Right before we go there, I do want to touch on this mentorship piece because mentorship coaching, et cetera, there's a ton of different opinions on that. Really quickly, how did you find your mentors? Was it organic? Did you pay for them? And how have we've heard how they've influenced your life, but how did you find them?
I would say in some cases they found me through relationships with my family or people that I went to church with or that I went to Morehouse with or that were affiliated with our fraternity.
Okay.
In other cases, it was from what we just talked about, reaching out and just being inspired by people's stories and asking them, hey, do you have 15 minutes for a phone call? Or, hey, I don't have a lot of money, but I can buy you a cup of coffee. I'm willing to meet you downtown on your lunch break or before work. Would you be willing to meet with me? I would honestly say that for the earlier part of my career, all of my mentors poured into me, not looking for anything in return, because they had someone who did it for them when they were young.
For sure.
And
paid it forward.
They paid it forward, and that was something that I always said, I want to be able to do the same thing. And when I started in the business, I knew that, man, I'm a unicorn. Like, there are not many people that look like me that are selling commercial real estate. Obviously, there's a ton of people in residential real estate that look like me in my community. But in terms of the brokers that are making decisions in terms of whether a tobacco store is going to be opened up in a space or a smoothie shop or a health store.
Yeah, that's something a broker can make the decision on.
Broker has a tremendous amount of influence in terms of what decision is made in that regard and what resources come to that community and what the communities look like.
So it's important for us to be able to make some of those decisions because some brokers don't have the best interest of our communities. They just looking for their own economic
And they don't
gain.
live in our communities. They live an hour or two away. And I'm just being honest, they make their money in our communities, but they don't volunteer. They don't give back. They take it back to their communities and essentially are pulling resources from our communities that we should have ownership of and we should have control of. And so whether we're talking about investing in your community as a family or as an individual, or developing real estate in your community or brokering these deals, we have to take ownership of our own communities.
That's right.
And we have to take ownership of the critical roles that play a huge part in that in that process. And so for me as a commercial real estate broker, it's been a blessing, and it's been something I take very serious because a lot of people don't have the opportunity, and a lot of people just don't know how much how much impact one can have in the business. So
makes sense. So what would you recommend to someone looking to get into the brokerage business? Things for them to look out for, things for them to consider. And then after that, what should they do within the first 30 days once they begin?
Oh, that's a great question. The first thing that I did was find a mentor. That's the first thing that I did. And no,
How do you
I
go about doing that?
In my own organization, when I had started, I was partnered with a senior broker in an office, okay? And sometimes, depending on what firm you're with, your senior broker may take 80% and may give you 20% because when you're an associate.
Yeah, I love these numbers. Pause. What does that even mean? I have $1 million sale.
Yep.
What percentage does you said 80-20, $1 million go?
We'll break it down. So as you had mentioned, we eat what we kill in the commercial real estate business. So if you're selling $1 million property, typically a commission on the sale of a commercial property is 6%. If you're representing the buyer or the seller, that commission is split in half. So 3% to the buyer's agent, 3% to the seller's agent. In a $1 million deal, 3% of $1 million is $30,000, 6% of $1 million is $60,000. So, if it's two brokers working on a deal representing a buyer or a seller, that 3% or that $30,000 is then split between both of the agents. And so, in some firms, when you're the associate, you may only get 20% of that $30,000 or 30% of that $30,000, and the senior broker will get 70 to 80%. So anywhere from $21,000 to $24,000. So they're getting the lion's share of the fee. My mentor said, "Look," and I really appreciated this. Said we're going to split everything 50-50. But at the time when I first started working with him, he only had about 5 listings. He's in the later part in his career.
What the average size of those?
Average size of those deals at the time were any deal up to about $2 to $3 million, and weren't tremendously big deals. Most of them were actually less than $1 million or right over $1 million. And I said, well, you have the experience, you have the knowledge. I have the hunger, drive, and passion, and the creativity, technical skills, relationship, hunger and drive, X, Y, and Z. And the time, I'm not married, don't have kids. So literally, we partnered together, and each year that in the business, I grew more, I learned more. Within the first 30 days of us working together, I have created my own business plan. I said, well, these are my weekly goals, and this is how many people I need to reach out to on a weekly basis.
What was that? Give me the number.
Oh, man. So first year, because remember, I just left working at a bank literally for 2 to 3 weeks and left the bank where I was making about $120,000, left that to go full commission. So I said, look, as long as I
no stability.
Yeah, so I said, as long as I can make $100,000 to $150,000, it's a successful year.
Right.
Because I've made what I would have made at the bank, right? And we both have our bank stories. It's kind of funny, man.
Yeah, you just made $100,000 more than I did.
So I ended up not making even half of that, man. I probably made like $40,000 the first year in the business. It was so hard.
Yeah.
And people would tell me in my office and other brokers, they say, yeah, it takes you about a good 3 to 5 years to really get going in the business. Because if you don't know anyone, if your daddy wasn't in the business, if your granddaddy wasn't in the business, if you didn't come from a family that was in business or have relationships with people that own commercial real estate, how are you going to build these relationships to be able to sell multi-million-dollar properties if you don't have the relationships? And so one of the things that I was very intentional about was my business development skills. And so constantly reaching out to owners, constantly providing market information, coming up with a business plan. So this comes from my political background. When you're running a political campaign, you want to touch people at least 7 times for them to know your name. And so that's why you get a phone call, you get a Facebook ad, you get you get a postcard in the mail, and all these different touch points. And that was the same principles that I applied to commercial real estate. So not only be in front of property owners and potential clients, but also to build my brand and to let people know that when you think of commercial real estate in Prince George's County in the DC area, I want you to think of Marcus Daniels.
That's right.
And
we do.
And that was my philosophy, and that was a part of my business plan early on. And I just stuck with it. But I was very critical. Every 3 months, I would go back and look at my business plan. I would look at the key performance indicators in terms of, okay, if I send out this many letters or this many. Oh man, when I first started, I was sending out about 50 letters a week.
Okay.
Then I grew that to 100, then 200.
How were you affording those?
Oh man, I took money out of my own pocket. I mean, this is the way I looked at it. This is the way I looked at it, B. If I send out 100 letters a week and my response rate is 5%, I'm going to get 5 people to call me that probably would like to sell their property. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow, maybe 3 months from now, maybe a year from now, 5 years from now. But
5 new contacts every single week for
5 new good leads.
Yeah.
So, and it added up. And from that, I took $100 out of my pocket every week starting off, paid the 40 whatever cents for the stamp, paid for the envelopes. While I was watching TV over the weekend, watching the game, I'd be licking envelopes, putting stamps on it, and then sending them out first thing in the week. And when I started to get calls from people to say, I got your letter in the mail, I want to talk to you about selling my property. You've been thinking about selling for a long time. Or, hey, your letter's been sitting on our kitchen table for the past year. We've been thinking about selling, but now we're finally ready to move forward.
Nice.
And so that was getting into the weeds of how to win business, how to build a pipeline of business was something I was very focused on. And I would say most of my time was focused on business development, and then the rest of my time was focused on transaction management. But for the younger agents, real estate agents that are out there that may be listening to this interview, I would tell you, get into the weeds of your business plan, get in the weeds of how you make money. Yeah, if I spend $100 a week, that's $400 a month. But if I get a listing, $1 million listing every week or every 2 weeks, I'm gonna make $30,000 to $60,000 off of that deal, and that's just off of 1 month's work.
Right.
You can do the math over a year.
Yeah, starts to add up really nicely.
Starts to add up, but it didn't happen overnight. I'm not gonna tell you this is a get-rich-quick type of business, but if you're hungry, if you're focused, if you are driven and really passionate about creating an opportunity, it's a great profession, man. And fast forward, year 6 now, sold over $100 million worth of commercial real estate. Been able to leverage my community development background to work on projects that have had a positive impact on the community. So whether working with churches and schools and helping them use underutilized land to build multifamily or other commercial developments, or selling properties that are being converted into healthcare resources, or that are working with the most vulnerable people in our community. I'm working on a deal right now that's actually about to close in the next 2 weeks. That's opening a drug and addiction recovery center. For 150 people a day will be getting treated at that facility. And the Prince George's County has been trying to do this at a larger scale for the past 25 years and hasn't been able to do it. And praise to God, been able to broker that deal, put it together. I worked on it for 2 years, and it's coming to fruition.
Give me some dap on that. Congratulations.
Those deals didn't give me the biggest commission checks, but those are my favorite deals because the community development background and how much it means to me. So
it improves the community.
And it improves the community. So it's easy in our business to look at the brand new buildings, look at the sale prices of the properties, think about the commissions and all of that. But it's not about the money. It's about the experience, the journey, and the impact that we make. So that's why I truly,
money is a byproduct of that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's the icing on the cake, but the journey is what drives us, man, and what wakes us up every day. The roller coasters, the ups and downs, the fact that every deal is different, every individual is different, and that's life.
Yeah. No, that's spot on, man. I think I couldn't agree more. How can people reach you if they want some additional information about brokerage?
Absolutely. So at NAI Global, which is essentially a top 5 commercial real estate brokerage firm across the world, we have 375 offices. I was appointed as the chair of our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council, so working specifically around supporting, attracting, and retaining, and bringing more minorities and women into the business. And so doing a ton of work right now and building out, that initiative, but personally giving out free resources to newer agents or agents that are in the residential side of the business and thinking about getting into commercial real estate and are, just trying to understand how can they build up their business. So I guess it's been for the past 2, maybe 3 years, I've taught classes, I've done seminars, How
can they find your information?
Oh, you find me on Instagram, Marcus N. Daniels. You can visit my website, marcusndaniels.com. You have a bunch of free resources and content, teach you how to grow your commercial real estate business, how to get started in the business. I am, essentially the product of people who poured into me and gave to me without looking for anything in return. And as a part of that, to the best of my ability, I try to do that even though I am very busy and my time is limited. I try to give as much as I can and just try to encourage the next generation. So please tap in with me, marcusndaniels.com. Follow me on Instagram at Marcus N. Daniels, and I'm sure you'll find hopefully some good free content that will help you in your business. And shoot me a message if you want to learn more about how to get started, or if you have a deal you're working on and you're trying to figure out how to handle it as a broker or agent. I'm happy to do that as well, because somebody did that for me.
Love it, man. 2-part questions, man. One of my favorite podcast shows is All the Smoke, and they ask these 2 questions.
Love that show.
Hats off to you brothers. Salute. I just wanted to borrow this, so hopefully you don't mind. First question, if you had a dinner table of 5, not including yourself, who would you have there and why?
Oh, great question. First, my late grandfather, my dad's dad, he passed away when my dad was 13 years old. And I never had the chance to meet him, but all of my family says I remind them so much of him.
Okay. Because
he was a hustler. And he was just a businessman and an entrepreneur. So definitely my late grandfather. I would definitely have to say Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., our frat brother.
Speak for yourself.
But I don't have to say nothing else about that. I would also say, and this is just coming from political background, I gotta say President Obama, no doubt.
Okay.
I had to have Obama. I would love to have met him when he was the president running for office, never did, so he would be invited to the table.
For sure.
And then the final 2, man, that's a really good question. I would have to say, I would have to say some of my friends that I lost that at a young age that were,
So you'll fill 2 spots with them?
Yeah, that were either victims of gun violence or something that unfortunately went wrong.
Gotcha.
I'll tell just a quick story, and it'll come full circle. And it's crazy because we're in Atlanta. One of my good friends, childhood friends growing up, unfortunately he was killed about 2 years ago, and he was killed about 2 years ago in a tragic situation where he was in an Uber pool. He was tragically killed by someone who was high on drugs and ended up killing the Uber driver and him. This is why I'm so passionate about this drug and addiction recovery center, because I lost one of my close friends. So definitely, and then just being young and from the time I was a kid, seeing people and people I knew being lost to gun violence. So definitely would leave two spots for them, man, so they could see, who I am today, and I could talk to them and let them know that their dreams and their desires, I hold on to them, and that motivates me every day.
Love it, man. Final question. Who would you want to see on this show? But before you answer, you have to be able to get them on it. It's got to be someone that's accessible to you, that you can refer, that we can get on.
That's a great question. Let me think. I got a good amount of people. Okay. I would have to say my line brother, Jason Crane.
Okay.
I would have to say him. Entrepreneur, businessman, tech executive, restaurant executive as well. Just a brilliant brother, and I'm just really excited to see his growth. And he built him and his co-founder. They built a successful company. We're able to sell it for for millions of dollars, and he's pivoted into this restaurant industry and is achieving even more success. So I gotta plug my line brother. You know how it is.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I would say, Jason, if you want to hop on, man, you can sit right here.
That's right.
Talk to our brother B.
Love it, man. Well, I really appreciate having you on. Love the story. Learned some new things about you, of course. I hope the audience was able to gain from this, man. Just the content, the information, the story, the passion. I really got from this more than anything else is like, you're passionate about community at the end of the day. And that's why we get along so much, because I am as well, right? So this whole platform is dedicated to telling stories of entrepreneurs, is to exposing different sides of business that we may not see every day and we may not understand. But thank you for adding to this piece and to the community of Roses at large. So
thank you,
appreciate
brother.
you, brother.
I appreciate you. And the beautiful thing about it is, in our community, when you think about the word community, you have unity. And then within unity, you have you and I. So without us being unified, it's literally no community, brother.
It's a bar.
So that's why we're here. That's why we love what we do. And we're impacting the lives of people we will never know. And that's a blessing.
Over and out. Thank you all for joining. Again, I'm your host, Brandon Rule. You can find me on all social media platforms as B_RULE. Over and out. Till next week. Thank you for joining. Appreciate you making it this far. If you liked the episode, share it with a friend, like, comment, subscribe on all YouTube and social media outlets. Also, make sure you check us out at our website, therosegrew.com. You'll see various things such as our merch, as well as, more importantly, a membership community that we've created for people interested in real estate and entrepreneurship. So, any other questions, comments, concerns, share it with us. We would love to hear your feedback. That's the only way we get better. Thank you. See you next week. Peace.